This recipe for a ruffled milk pie is an elegant and tasty dessert that's served as part of a traditional Greek Easter celebration. Phyllo that's been ruffled, baked, and filled with custard. The pie emerges from the oven with a distinctive flour-like appearance, and it's fun to make and rather interesting. We're starting with clarified butter. And here we have a pot that's been slowly melted. The milk solids have accumulated in the bottom of the pan, which you can see. There's a lot of foam on the top, and we'll just skim this off. I'm using a strainer to show you how much residue is left after you melt the butter and leave the milk solids in the pan. You don't want those milk solids. You want only the butter. Here we have a much clearer butter if you look at it. So clarified butter also has a high smoke point, meaning it doesn't burn as easily as unclarified butter. And additionally, you can keep a jar of clarified in your refrigerator for a longer time. And you can buy it, but I like making it because I know that it's the butter I want to use. So, on to the ruffled tart. Here's Philo. Philo tends to break really easily. This looks very nice, but it will dry out. Just dry out quickly. So I cover it with a flour sack towel that is slightly damp, not wet. Now, start making your ruffles. I'm using a large pan, 3 inches deep. This is like a wedding cake pan. And we want to brush the bottom of the pan with butter generously. I am also buttering the sides of the pan. You need a 14-inch pan for this recipe. You might have to borrow it from your friend who makes wedding cakes down the street. But it's a good pan to have, actually, and you could use it for a lot of other things. Okay, so now start working quickly. And we're going to take 1 sheet of phyllo. And now quickly butter your phyllo, working with your very soft bristle brush. And then you gather your phyllo and kind of pleat it like this. And starting in the center of your pan, you are going to make it into a spiral. And when it has the butter on it, it's actually more malleable. And you want to start making your rosette, which is basically like that. And your next sheet, we're going to need about 14 sheets of phyllo for this particular recipe. So it's going to get a little buttery on the table. Good to work on a clean breadboard, a stone surface. Keep going and going. And don't get disheartened when it starts to crack, because those cracks will disappear. So there, how gorgeous is that? Now brush it with a little bit more butter on the top. Be gentle, you don't want to tear the leaves any more. And now sprinkle with very light sprinkling of cinnamon. Transfer right to a 350-degree preheated oven and bake until golden brown, about 25 to 30 minutes. So here's our rosette. Doesn't it look absolutely gorgeous? And now we're going to pour over this a very simple but delicious vanilla custard. And the custard is 6 eggs. Break them up with a wire whisk and have scalding on the stove 3 cups of whole milk. And add 1 cup of superfine sugar. Superfine is an extra fine grain of sugar. If you don't have superfine, you can actually put 1 cup of sugar into your food processor and process it. It will get quite fine. A little hint, and 1 teaspoon of your best vanillas. Best vanilla. That might be a little vanilla-y. So when the milk comes up to a boil like that, it's scalded. Now we want to temper our custard. So take a scant scoop of hot milk and quickly whisking your egg mixture, add in a stream the hot milk. What we're doing is warming the egg yolks without burning them or curdling them. which is the real problem. Just add all the milk. And the nice thing about this is that the custard is actually going to get cooked right in the pan with the phyllo. And we're going to carefully pour this custard right over the rosette. So all the little nooks and crannies of the phyllo are being filled. Pop that right back into the oven, 25 to 30 minutes. You'll see the custard set. So that's what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. So now before cutting and serving, sprinkle very lightly with confectioner's sugar. It's starting to look more like a dessert. And a tiny bit more of the cinnamon. Not too much. Good. And then with a very sharp knife, you can cut through the crinkly phyllo, cut it into wedges, and serve it like a pie. Oh, look how pretty. Now that is a fine use of phyllo, an edible work of art. Generously dusted with cinnamon and confectioner's sugar, Bisteeya might look like a festive dessert, but it's actually the most delicious savory Moroccan meat pie, pigeon pie traditionally. 2 tablespoons of butter, saute very, very finely chopped onion. 1 large onion will do. Get the onions kind of translucent in the butter. We have 3.5 pounds of bone-in, skin-on chicken legs and thighs, to which we are going to add 4 cloves of garlic, very finely minced, 1/2 teaspoon of saffron threads, 3/4 teaspoon of powdered ginger, and 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric for color and taste. Add 1 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Rub the chicken in with all of this, trying to get each piece coated with some of these flavorings. Now add your chicken to the onion. We're going to stew the chicken to get it flavorful and tender. Now to this, add water, just enough to submerge the chicken parts. I think that's good. It's more like 4 cups. And don't forget, I almost forgot 4 cinnamon sticks for added flavor. So when this comes to a simmer, just reduce the heat, cover, and continue cooking for 1¼ hours until the chicken's done. So now to start the assembling of the contents for the Bisteeya. 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 3/4 pound of ground almonds. We're going to brown them and do that over medium-high heat, being very careful not to burn the almonds. Now the chicken, I've removed all the chicken from the broth and now reduce the broth by half. Almonds are just getting toasted. And now you can turn the heat off and add 1/2 cup of confectioner's sugar to the almonds. So you see, this is a real mix of sweet and savory, like much of Moroccan cooking. So 1½ teaspoons of cinnamon. As soon as the chicken is cool enough, time to take the chicken off the bone and just remove the skin, and we'll flake the chicken. And we'll just wait for the liquid to be reduced. So now we're getting ready to make some more of the filling. 8 eggs. Whisk them with 1/4 cup of freshly squeezed lemon juice. And you can just add the lemon juice right to the eggs or to the pot, it really doesn't matter. Add to the chicken 1/3 cup of finely chopped preserved lemon. Pour your eggs right into the liquid. So we're scrambling them in the chicken broth. And this will be a very flavorful egg mixture. Make sure you have 1 cup of flat leaf parsley, finely chopped, and 1/2 cup of cilantro, finely chopped. So here you can see how thick the eggs are getting. I'm going to turn off the heat, put in the cilantro, green leaves, and all that parsley. So you have kind of a greenish egg mixture. And we're getting pretty ready to make the pie. No, I have a special pan that I brought from home, but you can use any 10-inch by 2-inch cake pan and brush the entire interior surface with clarified butter. And we have 2 sticks of butter clarified. And now we have to layer the bottom with about 7 or 8 sheets of Phyllo. So here is our Phyllo, a fresh package, which I'm opening up. And unroll the Phyllo. Put it on your plastic wrap and a damp flour sack. Don't want that drying out in this hot air. The more humid your kitchen when working with Phyllo, the better. The butter keeps each layer separate and allows the Bisteeya to be very, very flaky. Our recipe calls for 6 to 8 sheets of Phyllo. The overhang is good because you're going to put it over the top and then you're going to make a top. So a layer of chicken, then the almond, warm, sweet almonds, and now the egg. See how this adds a little bit of color to the whole thing? And now more chicken. So beautiful. The almond. You could make small, say 6-inch pies. And more egg. Bring this up like this over the pie. Now that is the pie itself. Now for the topping. Working quickly. Put this on. And I would suggest at least 6 layers of Phyllo on the top. So you see it's very nice. The top is smooth. Take a scissor and just trim a little of this excess Phyllo. Now some people roll this up the edge or tuck it under. I like tucking it under. Lift it up, tuck it down the side of the pan, and then fold. And now brush the top again with butter. You can chill it at this point and get it really cold, the pastry itself, for easier slicing. But if you have a very sharp knife, as I do, you just score in a diamond pattern across the top, going through several of the Phyllo layers, and then in the opposite direction. So you have kind of a diamond patterned lattice on the top, and then put into a 350-degree oven until golden brown. Takes about 45 minutes. The Bisteeya is utterly gorgeous. Now, before it cools, sprinkle with confectioner's sugar and then draw little lines of cinnamon in a traditional diamond pattern. The tastiest, most fragrant pigeon pie, really chicken, that you will ever taste. Enjoy. Baklava is a popular Middle Eastern pastry baked with buttered layers of Phyllo, filled with chopped nuts, spices. A rosewater flavored syrup is then drizzled on top for a mouth-watering finish. And today, the baklava that I'd like to show you how to make is made with very finely chopped pistachios. That's why it's green like this. California actually produces about 98% of our nation's pistachios. They're cultivated widely in California, but also in Europe, in Italy, and in Turkey and Iran. This is a couple of pounds of pistachios finely chopped. So we have to make the sugar syrup first, and that is 2½ cups of granulated sugar mixed with 1¼ cups of water. Oh, and a little bit of lemon, about 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. That's approximately a teaspoon. Bring that to a boil, swirling it, and just cook it until you have a nice, clear syrup of sugar and water. Also add to that, when it's finished, a tablespoon of rose water. Rose water is a very, very popular perfumey liquid that is used in foods that are cooked with Phyllo. And here is the filling. So it's 4 cups of chopped pistachios, 1 cup of sugar, and about 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Mix this all together, and that's the filling. So easy. You can use pistachios, you can use walnuts, which are very popular. You could also use almonds. And to this, 1 tablespoon of the fragrant rose water. Very fragrant. That's our filling. So now we can start layering our baklava. Now you can build it right in your baking dish, or you can build it on a piece of parchment, and I'll show you how easy that is. So for the bottom layer, we're going to use the whole ½ pound for our bottom. And I'm going to go really fast because I don't want this to dry out. So sheet after sheet with butter. So ½ pound for the bottom, and then ½ pound for the top. So here are 20 sheets of phyllo, beautifully buttered. The dish is heavily buttered also with clarified butter. And now put your filling right in here. And you want it all in an even layer. And now the same process for the top. So if your butter gets a little solidified, which happens because it's cooling, you can just warm it in a bain-marie or in your microwave, just for a brief few seconds. So keep layering until you get the top 20 layers buttered and evenly stacked. A whole batch right onto the top of your baklava. You might have a little bit of trimming to do. You can do that with your sharp knife right here. And then you can score this into 1½ inch wide diamonds. I'm going through all the layers of phyllo with my sharp knife. Transfer to a 400-degree oven, bake for 10 minutes, reduce the heat to 300, and bake until golden brown, about 50 minutes more. So it's going to take an hour in the oven. So here is our slightly cooled, beautiful pistachio baklava. Now, the syrup is essential, and this has to sit overnight before serving, which greatly improves the flavor of the baklava. 2 cups of the sugar syrup. I've added rose water, a teaspoon of rose water to this, and allowed it to cool. Now just pour this carefully over the whole flaky top. And the syrup itself actually consolidates all the layers of phyllo too. So good. So let that sit at room temperature overnight. Now, these have soaked overnight, so you can see there's an actual difference. These have gotten a little darker in color, and this is the pistachio, which has sat for 1 day with the sugar syrup, and this is the walnut. Whether you make it with pistachios or make it with walnuts or with almonds, this Greek classic will not disappoint. You will really come back for seconds and thirds. Now this is an unusual way to make a traditional Greek spinach pie that can be served as an appetizer, side dish, or a light lunch. And I'm using spinach in the filling today, but you can also substitute your favorite greens like dandelion or Swiss chard or beet greens. I'm cooking ½ cup of rice in 3/4 cup of boiling water with a pinch of salt. And bring that to a boil. Cover and let it cook very, very slowly until the rice has absorbed the water and is nice and fluffy and cooled. We have 2 whole pounds of baby spinach that is chiffonaded, about 1/4 inch. Put your rice into your spinach. I'm going to use my hands. I beg your forgiveness, but it's so much spinach and so many other greens, and I want to make sure that everything is well mixed. 1 big bunch of chiffonaded mint. 1 large bunch of scallions cut crosswise into approximately 1/8 inch slices. And 1 bunch of parsley. You can use curly parsley. Oh, this smells so good. You can use curly parsley, or you could use flat leaf parsley, which is a little bit more flavorful, I think. So here, just that little tiny bit of rice and quite a bit of salt, 2 teaspoons of salt and 2 teaspoons of freshly ground black pepper. This is one of my favorite hors d'oeuvres. I do triangles of phyllo with spinach filling, but for a lunch dish, cooking it in squares like this is really wonderful. You could add dill to this if you like, instead of the mint. You could add onions to this too if you like. There is a liquid, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. I'm going to put this right into my 3/4 cup of olive oil so it gets all mixed in. So soy sauce, olive oil, and pour this all over your spinach. And now stir that. It's already starting to deflate, but you want a flavorful filling that has texture and has a little body. There, I think that looks beautiful. So I've already layered in 10 layers of phyllo for the bottom crust. And you can trim the edges if you like, and try not to tear your phyllo. There, that's simple. Buttered, layered 10 sheets, 10 leaves of phyllo. Now, we're going to pack our spinach right on top, the whole big batch. Looks like a lot, and it is. And if you let this sit a little bit, it will shrink in size, in volume. So there, I'm going to press this down and clean up my top and then put the top layers of phyllo on top of the spinach. So I didn't mention, but I'm using the large sheets of phyllo cut in half. So they now measure 9 by 13. And notice I've just left the whole stack of phyllo in a stack, and I'm working on the top layer of the stack. Rather than lifting sheets up for these small pieces, this works very, very well. And you can put another 6 to 8 to 10 pieces right on top. So now with a very, very sharp knife, cut through the entire spanakopita, or spinach pie, all the way down to the bottom. 4 by 3. So you'll end up with 12 beautiful squares. This will make final serving cutting easier if you do this now. Such a delicious item, phyllo. So flaky and beautiful. Get this right into a 400-degree preheated oven and bake for 20 minutes. Then reduce your temperature to 350 and continue baking another 40 minutes. And you'll have a gorgeous golden brown spanakopita pie. Now, would you like 1 square or 2? And you notice how beautifully the spinach is cooked. It's not watery. It's a delicious way to sneak in your greens, don't you think? Thanks so very much for watching, and I'll see you for the next episode of Martha Bakes. Brush 1 sheet of phyllo with melted butter. Sprinkle with sugar. Repeat, layering twice more. Cut stacked phyllo into 6 pieces. Press each square into a cup of a muffin pan. Bake at 325 degrees until golden brown, about 20 minutes. Fill with Greek yogurt, fruit, and a drizzle of honey.